Hi everyone, this is Shane R. Monroe. I was asked after my last GOG video setting up the GOG Galaxy client and Cyberpunk 2077 if it was possible to have multiple game launchers in Steam pointing to a different install inside of GOG Galaxy. So in other words, you could install a whole bunch of games inside of the GOG Galaxy client and then create a separate non-Steam game entry so that you could do a custom control, you could do a custom system setting for setting frame rates, all that good stuff. Simply put, I want to be able, as a user, to create multiple different launchers that still use GOG, but I can use custom configurations for each game. So if you have not already done the original video, if you've not gone through my original tutorial, everything in this video assumes you did everything the way that I did in that video. So if you've somehow installed GOG some other way, or you've got GOG games installed some other way, this video is not for you. You must be using the same techniques I used in the last video. Okay, with all that being said, the disclaimer's out of the way. I have two games installed. After I installed Cyberpunk the other day, I went ahead and installed one of my other favorite games, American Hero. So now I have two separate games inside of GOG from a single GOG launcher. Now this is fine for most people, but in this case, with the GOG client entry in Steam, I only have access to one set of controls. I only have access to one set of settings. So there is a way to do this. It's a little complicated, but let's go through it anyway. In order to get your own launcher for each game, you'll have to add another Steam game. The problem is every time you add a non-Steam game, it creates a brand new Proton prefix. The GOG client cannot be shared across Proton prefixes. So if you create a brand new game, for example, and we browse over to where I installed Cyberpunk, which is on my SD card. So go to Run, Media, and go to High Seas. And here's where Cyberpunk is. If I go to Bin, let me change this. It's all files, x64. And now we're to select Cyberpunk. All right, add it. Okay, so now I have a Cyberpunk entry that's pointing to that executable. If I were to hit play right now, well, first off, I'd have to change the Proton compatibility, but if I were to hit play right now, it would launch the game, but it won't launch GOG. GOG exists in its own isolated little Proton prefix over here. How does one solve that problem? I now have two entries. I can now run GOG client all by itself or Cyberpunk all by itself. But what I can't do is get the GOG client to run alongside this. The Proton prefix created for Cyberpunk 2077 is pretty much useless. I really just need this to run under the context of the GOG client's Proton prefix. Let's take a look. Let me exit. So let's make sure our Proton compatibility layer is set the same as GOG, which I believe I just did standard Proton 704. Perfect. We'll go back to Cyberpunk. I'll set this just to show you that this does indeed work as I said. Compatibility, force, and we'll use 704. Now, providing there's no requisites or anything else weird that Cyberpunk needs to run, this should technically work. But as I mentioned before, the GOG client's not going to launch. You're not going to get your cloud saves. You're not going to get game updates, right? So not very helpful. Yeah, so here you go. Sort of defeats the purpose of using GOG Galaxy at all. Okay, so we know Cyberpunk works. We just close right back out of there. All right, but here's the fun part. Cyberpunk, this entry of Cyberpunk did create its own Proton prefix. So let's jump into Dolphin and let's go over to our compatdata and let's look at the most recent Proton prefix that was just created. So I'm going to make a note of this, 25896711198. Now this number is not going to be the same for you. It's going to be something different. It's sort of randomly generated. So we know that this is the Proton prefix for this Cyberpunk entry, but Cyberpunk's installed on the SD card, right? Cyberpunk's not in here at all. This is just a placeholder to hold Proton compatibility files. I want basically this Proton prefix to share with my GOG prefix. And which prefix is that? Well, we will use the great Proton tricks to tell us what our GOG client's number is. 232, so I'm going to make a note of this too, 23244638553. Okay, so now I know what both Proton folders are. This is the one that I care about. And it's right here. So I'm going to go in here, right? This is the folder that has what I want. So I'm going to select all and copy, so I have that on my clipboard. Perfect. Now I'm going to back up. I'm going to actually delete Cyberpunk's Proton compatibility folder. Bloop. I'm then going to create a symlink. Create new. Link to a file or directory. And I want it to link to, I'm going to link it there, and I want to call it, you guessed it, 25896711198. All right, cool. All right, so now if I go in here, I'll see the Proton prefix for GOG Galaxy. Is that true? Let's take a look. GOG Galaxy, sweet. All right, so we now have a link up. So when I run this, it's going to use the GOG Galaxy Proton prefix as its base and then run this game. That doesn't solve the problem though. So, I mean, we could prove that by just running the game, but you wouldn't see it because the Galaxy client's not loading. Only Cyberpunk is loading. Let's fix that problem next. Go to GOG client. We're also going to copy this compat mount just for, I mean, you basically want these two entries to be fairly close together from a baseline point of view. So I'm going to go into Cyberpunk. You can see that it worked, but I'm going to go ahead and add this. Make sure your compatibility layers are the same, and they are. Two, 44638. PFX, Drive C, GOG Galaxy, Galaxy Client. Okay, let's take another run at this. But it's not doing what we want, right? We want it to launch Cyberpunk. All right, so let's go ahead and exit this. Okay, so next up, getting Cyberpunk to run from this entry. So we now have two entries. Let's just review. We have GOG Client installed as a non-Steam game as per my original video. All the files for GOG Client are inside of this Proton prefix. You know, Proton prefix number 23244638553. Here we have a symbolic link from this launcher reaching into this GOG Client's Proton prefix, which is great. That's what we want. Now all we need to do is add a command line to this launcher to actually launch Cyberpunk. So how do you get that, right? Where does one get the command line that you need? So to do that, we're going to go someplace called gogdb.org, and we're going to search for the game that we want to add a launcher to. In this case, it's Cyberpunk. In this case, we're looking for a game ID that matches this actual game. So this is the game ID that we're going to use to actually launch the game from the command line. Now, in some cases, it may look like there's more than one. What we're looking for is the base game number, 1423 in this case, Cyberpunk, all right? So now, let's go ahead and I'm going to copy that value for accuracy's sake. We're going to go back into the Cyberpunk launcher, go to the end of the target, past the quote, the double quote, hit space, and then add the following. /command equals run game. I'm not sure if case sensitivity is important here, so I would do that. /game ID equals, and then paste in your game ID, which is 14 blah, 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 Cyberpunk. Okay, so Now it should run the client, but this time pass a command line parameter saying, hey, why don't you go ahead and run Cyberpunk for us? Let's see how that works out. So if everything works out, GOG Galaxy will launch, and it is. It will bring up the entry automatically for Cyberpunk, perform any cloud saves, then launch the game. That would be ideal. Brought up the game. It says it is syncing, which is great. It's exactly what we want. And as soon as it's done syncing, it plays the game. Now, I'm not clicking anything. There it goes. It just played. Perfect. Hey, that's exactly what we wanted. Everything works exactly as we want. Now, to get out of this, we can go ahead and just escape from the game itself. You could right-click and close it. But remember, we want the game closed, but not the launcher. So I would recommend exiting the game normally. So I have to wait for this to load before I can exit it normally. And the reason being is you want that final sync to happen, right? You want it to sync up your cloud saves before you leave GOG. So let's go ahead and run through that. All right, so let's go ahead and quit the game normally. Great. And now you'll notice that the launcher, the GOG Digital Locker, will go ahead and resync one more time. There it goes. All right. Once that's done, you need to cleanly exit this launcher. Now, in desktop mode, that means going here and hitting exit. In gaming mode, which I'll show you in a minute, you're going to exit it a little bit differently. But go ahead and make sure you exit it out fully. In desktop mode, you'll see that the little icon down on the sys tray area down here is gone. Okay, so what have we done? We have successfully created a standalone entry in Steam pointing to our GOG client, but playing a game that's installed on the SD card. A little bit confusing. Let's do it one more time. So I'm going to go ahead and add a non-Steam game. I'm going to browse. I'm going to go right back out to that folder on my SD card that has American Hero installed. Once again, I'm going to change it to, you can see there's American Hero. Okay. We're going to add it. We're only doing that to initially create the prefix, right? So we're not really launching it from there. I mean, you would think, oh, I'll just save my time and I'll do it the other way. No, you could do it that way. I'm just going through one methodology that I like to use. All right, so now I've got American Hero as a non-Steam game, same as I had Cyberpunk, but again, we're gonna go back and retool it. So back into our GOG client, I'm gonna go ahead and add my Steam compat mount. All right, I'm going to make sure my compatibility layer is set the same. Great. And then I am going to pause. I'm going to make a play to make sure that the Proton prefix gets created properly, etc. You don't really have to run like the whole game. Oh, it's too late now. It died anyway. Fine. Because there's probably some requisites missing. All right, fine. So I've now got a Proton prefix. I should be able to go over here to my compat data just now. This is the one that was created. And if you remember correctly, our GOG client is in 23244 umpty squat. So I'm going to grab that path, delete it, right, just like we did before, because we're going to make a symlink to the other one. Go back to compat data. Create new, link to file or directory, link it back to the original Proton prefix, and let's put in 9953422266. Okay, so now we've recreated a symlink for the Proton prefix used by properties. We're going to browse. We are going to go back to our Proton prefix and launch the GOG Galaxy client. Probably easier if we just went back here. Went to GOG Galaxy, grab that path, paste it in here. And Galaxy client. Okay. And then we need to add our command line at the end of it. This launch. Sweet. Now all we need is the game ID. Let's go back to our database, search American Hero. Only one of those. Get our number, copy it. So once again, /command equals runGame. All of these will be in the description, by the way. Game ID equals, let's see, what was our number? 17185111445. Oop, did I just fat finger that? 1445. Okay. Okay, so now we have our original Proton prefix containing the GOG Galaxy client. We have a fake Proton prefix pointing to the GOG Galaxy client, but runs Cyberpunk. We also have another fake link over to the GOG Galaxy client prefix, only this time it's for American Hero. So let's go ahead and propertize. Yes, that's a real word. American Hero. Sweet. So as requested, we now have a GOG client entry. We have individual launchers for games within, but that also launch GOG Galaxy first and after. So let's go ahead and run American Hero. This should run the GOG Galaxy client first, open up the page of American Hero, sync, and then launch the game. That's what we're looking for it to do. And if you leave this in a full Windows state, it would be there when you get back. Okay, it's syncing. Let's get that game going. There it is. Sweet. All right, so everything has happened exactly the way we want it to happen. The game runs, blah, blah, blah. All right. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and get out of this. I'll do it the hard way here. Close, and then I'll exit. All right, so at this point we're done. I mean, we've accomplished the task. So one more thing before we go, let's go over to gaming mode, because this can cause a little bit of confusion if you don't exit games in the proper way. Weird things could happen. So I want to show you exactly how to do this properly. So let's go ahead and launch Cyberpunk. And again, notice that we can now do individual control sets and all that good stuff for each game, which is kind of one of the things we wanted to get done here. So as we expect, GOG Galaxy launches. It brings up the game we asked for. It does a sync. And then it starts the game. Again, everything that we wanted. Sweet. Let's say you're ready to exit, right? You're done playing. My recommendation is you exit the game properly. So we're going to exit the game properly, and then I'll show you sort of the override version. Now we could, well, let's do that. So we could hit the Steam button, right, and go over here to Cyberpunk, sorry, angle here, and then close that with the X button. We could just shut the game off like that and leave GOG Galaxy running in the background. And technically speaking, that should update it. So let's try and see what happens. Let's close that window. Okay, and then it returned and GOG was still running in the background. Let's see if GOG will go ahead and sync if we exit that way. It does. So if we go to exit game right now, so let's run this again. And this time we're just going to exit the game by exiting the game. If you hit exit the game now, you'll kill both the game and Galaxy. So you won't get your sync up. You won't get your Windows sync this time. Probably not what you want. Now you could exit the game first here, right? Wait for the GOG Galaxy to update and then kill the whole game from there once it's done. Or you could simply exit the, launcher through here and it should be clean. Now I will tell you though that if you exit the launcher from here, it might hang Steam. I don't know why this is, but it doesn't hang it completely, but if If you quit from here, sometimes it'll sit here and spin and never finish unless you manually abort. Right? It just sits here. So I hit abort to get back out. All right, well, listen, that's pretty much it. If you have questions, I know this was sort of a weird techie sort of tutorial. If you have questions, please leave a comment in the section down below. Of course, if you don't even have a question, leave a comment, helps the channel. Like, subscribe, blah, blah, blah. Help the channel grow. That's it. This is Shane R. Monroe. As always, thanks so much for watching, and take care.